welcome to this new episode of our special, very special South African series of our Quantum Way Chronicles. This is for me the last one, but maybe not the last for you. And I'm really thrilled and honored to be at Didi Mogashoa's house. Thank you, Didi, to welcome us here in your home and sharing a little bit of what you're doing here in South Africa and a little bit maybe of your story. So, Didi, you have created a foundation, the Didi Friends Foundation. You're also part of the Nexus Global Exchange. Maybe you'll explain a little bit more. You're also part of the board of the Mindfulness Institute of South Africa. So that's a lot of, and you're a coach, a life coach, and you're doing an incredible job. So that you're gonna talk about and share with our audience. Thank you, Didi. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's only a pleasure to have you here and to share about the work that I do. Yes, I am Didi Mogashoa. I started the Didi Friends Foundation in 2006, and that was born out of seeing a need to bring about some kind of equanimity between the government schools in South Africa and the private schools. So bridging that gap that kids need in terms of being given the support with their education. And that turned into me seeing a need that it's not only education that they need, but the psychosocial support that they need. And that's where my life coaching then came in partnering with different organizations, which are mostly based in what we call our townships or our underserviced communities. And then with my curiosity of always learning and challenging myself to grow, I then did a mindfulness certification with Stellenbosch University. And with that, it allowed me to give 8-week mindfulness courses. And with that, then I brought also the aspect of mindfulness and the power that it has in giving tools, giving resources, and allowing one to discover or inquire about themselves. And so I started giving 8-week mindfulness courses to those underprivileged communities. And I started with girls who were young, between the age of 13 and 16. It was a bit of a challenge.
That's a challenge.
But a good challenge because it taught me the aspects of mindfulness that I was talking about: patience, non-striving, and non-judging. And so in mindfulness, we always talk about how you learn from the participants, and we sit in a circle because it's a sharing. No one is above or below. And so that's the work I do, really. And as you said, I do wear many hats, but the hats are interlinked. They're not really separate. If you look at them, I got involved in Nexus Global, which is an organization that looks at everyone that wants to be a change maker, really, globally. And so I represent Africa. I'm the Africa leader. And we do work from your women's rights, children's rights, education, mental health and wellness. And we also look at fun things like music and fashion and how that can be cross-culturally and also within different countries, how we can exchange ideas and how we can uplift each other. So it's an organization that looks at bringing ideas, bringing change to different, in different aspects, and for us to see how to collaborate. And yes, the life and business coaching is what I try to bring, if you can say, buy bread with. But that also is, and I incorporate that. I do mostly one-on-one consultations with mostly people who we call in the C-suites, who are in management positions, and with corporates within South Africa and hopefully globally soon. And so I also bring a lot of aspect of mindfulness, because we can't say we want to lead others if we're not mindful and if we're not aware of how we are as human beings.
You came to that. It's not a. I don't. I would. How would I say? You didn't come here by chance. You know where you come from. Maybe you can share your story, because people don't really realize what it has been to live and to be born during apartheid, being a Black woman or Black girl, and getting out of it. And so you're kind of, I think it's interesting to tell us a little bit about your own story, if it's okay with you, of course.
Yeah. So it's interesting, because I grew up in Mamelodi. So Mamelodi is a township that is in Pretoria, so now called Tshwane. As South Africa, we are a developing country. We're a country that has been through a lot of turmoil and a lot of changes. And so we got our independence in 1994, and which meant I was born in 77. And so which meant that I lived through the transition. And living through the transition, my parents were middle-class family. I come from parents who were teachers and also very curious and love education, and who developed themselves into, my dad is now a doctor in psychology, and my mother has a master's in remedial therapy. And so I'm the youngest of 5, and they gave pride in their kids' education. And so within the circumstances of apartheid, they had an opportunity to have enough to send us into private schools. But that was a challenge on its own, because it meant moving from the township where kids were not going to school. There was times where there were riots. So teachers were saying, they used to call it a pen down. So teachers were not teaching. Kids were not allowed to come to school. So you find that when we went to school, we had to go through roadblocks. And my mother used to have us at the back of her car, and underneath we'd be wearing our school uniform. On top we'd be wearing a nightgown and laying back as if we're sleeping, pretending we're sleeping. So she could get us out or sneak us out of the township because other kids were not going to school. So had she been clear that she's taking us to school, she would have been perceived as a sellout, as somebody who's not standing with the inequality that was happening. Excuse me. But yet she was also trying as a mother just to provide for us. And so it was a tricky situation. Yes, she was standing firm to what's not right, but she had chosen to take us to a school that allowed Black children, because many schools were not allowing also Black kids of color to be in the same schools. So this was one of the few schools. It was a convent Catholic school, only girls school, that allowed all different races to be educated at the same level. And so, yeah, so growing up with that was And then coming back home and not really being accepted with the friends that I used to have was also a challenge because our school holidays were different. I used to be involved in everything. So weekends I used to be playing hockey or tennis. And so that was a challenge also to adapt to that. And so finding myself almost living in two worlds, knowing my heritage and being proud of who I was, but yes, having the privilege to be in a school that gave me what most kids were not getting.
Mm-hmm. And that's what you're you're an advocate today for trying to get education to all children here in South Africa and trying to help with the foundation, right? This is really important. And you knew, your mother taught you that. She knew that was so important to get education, and you're doing the same.
Yeah, so
in a different way, of course.
That's true, that's true. We have a word called Ubuntu in our language, and I think Desmond Tutu really made sure that it was known worldwide. And so Ubuntu is about really caring for the next person. And as you rightfully say, my parents were advocates of the word Ubuntu. So I mentioned that I'm the youngest of 5, but we're not only 5 in the family. We were always 6 or 7 because they took on family members, cousins who were struggling and also educated them. And so the Didi Friends Foundation really is born out of that. It's born out of seeing a need that you are because of everybody else around you. And so saying to everyone who's able to, let us come together and bridge that gap between the inequalities that we have within our education in the government system and the private schools, and how we can come to the middle of bridging that gap and the need that's out there. At the time when I started the foundation, they said an average child who was in grade 3 was at a reading level of a 5-year-old or was coming into the school system not knowing basics. And so for me, that's a problem. And that then manifests to crime, to perpetual gender-based violence. It just perpetuates into so many social ills in communities when people are not given the education. And so, I guess education is important in also seeing the world in a different perspective and giving you can travel through books, through reading. You can already experience the world. And so, but when you don't have that opportunity, it becomes a problem.
And how does your foundation participate or help this educational project, or what do you do exactly?
So the motivation really has been I don't believe in reinventing the wheel. So the motivation has been around collaboration. So if I find an organization that's already within a community and perhaps there's one that I've been working with for a number of years. It's called Ntethelelo Foundation. Ntethelelo means forgiveness in the Zulu language. And they have a after-school program that runs 3 till 5, Monday to Saturday. And they've got kids that within the community that come there, and they feed them, they clothe them, then they give extra lessons too. And so how the foundation came into assisting with basics, and then we saw that there was a big psychological and social need. And so I with people that I work with, as psychologists that I work with, we came in and gave psychological help, and I came in, gave my life and business coaching, well, more life coaching tools, and also gave them just basic life tools as to how to navigate life. We're talking about communities where there's 8 people who are living in one room. These kids, over weekends, they experience seeing a murder within their street corner, or their mother who is trying to make ends meet and has started a little project of selling alcohol out of that small room, and you get men who come in to buy alcohol and end up wanting to molest the child. And so these are the kids we work with. And so on a Monday, sometimes we get lots of tears. Or we get kids who are already HIV positive because they were born with HIV. So we realize you can't also say you're teaching or you're helping people with education and not taking care of their needs, their emotional needs. And so we had to take a step back and realize that before we can teach maths or science, we need to take care of the heart. We need to take care of the emotions and give them the tools through mindfulness, through coaching, through therapy, so that they can be functioning human beings.
Talking about mindfulness, this is really the core of your way of helping people. What have you found in the mindfulness practice that is helping, but also what have you learned from the practice you've done with people that are underprivileged, or people you're working with that are with this South African and African culture? What are the bridges between the two, the mindfulness practice and all the things that people live with and cope, and that help them cope with suffering and difficulties and poverty? And
Yeah, I think the first key principle around mindfulness is that you can't teach what you don't practice. And so having a solid practice myself, daily reminding myself that it is a practice, and sitting on my meditation cushion or getting onto my yoga mat, first and foremost, is what grounds me. And then going into a teaching or sharing with others mindfulness practices, then, as mentioned before, just coming into a circle as we begin is a way to show everyone that we are all equal and that this is a sharing, that I'm going to be perhaps reminding them of what mindfulness is, because I think the teachings of mindfulness are a reminder of our humanity, about our essence, and about the light within us. And so when I do that, just starting being in a circle is a reminder of that, of the light that everyone carries. And then
you talked about Ubuntu, and when you saying that, I really feel this spirit of Ubuntu. People didn't wait for mindfulness to be in circles and be together, and this togetherness that we find in Ubuntu.
absolutely. And so we have 11 different languages and cultures within South Africa. And most of those 11, how stories were told, how wisdom was passed down, was around a circle of fire, was at night, families gathering in a circle, in the middle there's fire. And so that wisdom of Ubuntu has been there for centuries. And that's the stories I've been told about my grandmother, how she used to tell stories about when they were around the fire. And those stories have made me the woman I am today, and how I can mother my kids and how I can be with others to show humanity, to be able to see people for who they truly are, and to hear their heart when they share. And so you're right in saying that mindfulness, perhaps it's a beautiful, quaint word, but it is maybe a word that has been existing within the African cultures for centuries. And in how I've seen people tap into that is through dancing, and it's through singing. There's a friend of mine who comes from a royal family in a neighboring country in Botswana. And he shared a story with me about how one of the elders within the royal family had passed on. And there were men who were sitting on one side. This is during, if I can say, the mourning ceremonies, as they were mourning this person who had passed on. He said, men were in unison humming. He said the humming went on for perhaps 30 minutes. And he said after that, no words needed to be spoken, because that humming was a way of honoring the man that he was, the man that had passed on, honoring his lineage. And that humming in unison was a healing to the heart. And just that for me was just, and I said to him, that's mindfulness in action. And he said, you're right. And so, I'm not sure what else to say, because there is just so, I guess what I would love to see is just this sharing of what I've just shared with you being documented, being used as a tool amongst other mindfulness tools that we have. Yeah.
That was something that was, a question or a thinking about. What did you incorporate in your mindfulness practice from everything you've learned from your parents, grandparents, or your ancestors from the South African country? So what did you bring into your practice of mindfulness? How did you adapt it? And because there are some things, it's really Western practice, but it has to be adapted. And I think, and also what mindfulness can bring to this wisdom also to people who are not used to maybe think about that they can focus on themselves, go inside and just be present and learn the beauty of being present. It's both sides.
So I don't build a bonfire when we form a circle, but I do bring a candle. So I bring a candle, and I always begin my sessions with lighting a candle and telling them the candle symbolizes I'm quite upfront in being vocal about my heritage of being a child of ancestors who were traditional healers. And so when I light the candles, I always say that I'm inviting those who come before me and my ancestors to be with me as I start this session. And in me lighting that, I also ask you to invite yours to come into this session and guide us as we begin. And so that's how I start my sessions. And I find that allows everyone to be. it says, I'm acknowledging who you are, whom you come from, and who you've become, and who you are today in this present moment. And for me, that's important to say, to allow people to come into the space knowing that all of them is welcomed. And also what I've adapted is you'd find material that speaks about a vacuum cleaner or driving your car, you're on automatic pilot. The people I work with in the underserviced communities don't drive cars or don't have a vacuum cleaner. They sweep with a broom. And so I say, as you're sweeping with your broom, sometimes you end up sweeping that space without awareness. So how can you take each broom stride as you're sweeping with mindfulness, feeling into your breath how your hand feels as you're sweeping? How is it feeling? Are you holding onto your jaw? Is your forehead maybe, have you crunched up your face? Is there any tension that you're holding on as you're sweeping? Can you perhaps see where you're holding on to, where you don't need to hold on to? And so that's the adaptation, to make it real to the people that you're working with. Because there's nothing more offending of talking about an automatic car when those people don't have cars. But being realistic to the situation, adapting your teaching and honoring where they are and meeting them where they are. And so that's what I try to do.
Yeah. You talked about you when you did your mindfulness training, you did a research with a group of girls, the teenagers that you talked about. You did your training with Simon Weitzman that
Yes.
we've interviewed too, part of this series. You told us that you at the beginning it was like a little weird. You said it was a challenge. They didn't really get to what you were doing with them, the girls, the teenagers, the adolescents, and then you sense a shift. Something happened.
Yes, so correct. It was a group of teenagers that it was myself and another, because we worked in pairs, and another lady. And so it was a real challenge. I had forgotten how mischievous young girls can be, and they would be lying down for a body scan, and the one would be tickling the one next to her, really just being mischievous and not taking the teaching seriously. And so it was, firstly, I realized that it would be important also to involve their parents, to have a meeting with their parents, tell them what their girls are going to be going through in the 8 weeks, and giving them a sense of what mindfulness is. So giving them a short mindfulness meditation, just the breath, and then giving them a taster of what mindfulness yoga is. That assisted, because when they were home, then if they're doing that, they say, I'm meditating, Didi has given me homework, then they understand. Because most of what the work that we do in mindfulness is done outside of the classroom. And so it was important to have the parents buy-in and parent support with that. And so the shift that I started to see was within the 4th and 5th week. The 4th week, somehow they'd come into already in a circle. I didn't have to say to them already, girls, come into a circle. Already they were forming themselves into a circle and sitting. And by the time we were sitting down into a practice, they almost knew to still themselves. As I lit the candle, put it into the center, it was a signal, okay, now we're beginning. And the shift that I loved to see was when we had the day of silent practice. It was interesting to see them as they came in, that they understood that today was going to be silence. Although there was still like eye contact and wanting to giggle and smile at each other. Within the first break, we had began, I think, at 8 a.m. in the morning. By 10 o'clock, they ate in silence. When we had our tea break, they ate in silence. They had their tea in silence and walking in silence. And the feedback at the end of the day from the girls, they said, I didn't realize how it was so nice to be in silence. I didn't realize how nice it is to just be to feel my breath coming in and out. I didn't realize that I was holding on to my shoulders so much, or I was clenching my jaw unnecessarily. Because as the practices go, they're prompting you to where you're holding on, where you don't need to. Where can you soften? Where can you perhaps use your breath to allow, as you practice yoga, to soften into the posture? And so it was interesting to hear the girls remark as to where they were holding on to, where they didn't need to, or how feeling into the breath was a sort of coming home for them. One girl had said that. She said, I didn't realize how I was holding on to my breath so much. And when you said taking deep breaths in, or following the in-breath and the out-breath, how that allowed me to just be in touch with my breath. Mm-hmm. And it's always humbling for me to work within those environments and with those kids. At the end of our session of that day of silence, one of the girls came up to me and said, Didi, we don't have food for the past 4 days at home. And just being here has been great because I've had 2 meals today. And I'm just sad that I don't have anything to take back home for my siblings. And so you think you have formed a group that is helping you with, because it was helping me with my studies, with completing my thesis and my qualification to be a mindfulness teacher. But yet it was doing so much more to the participants as well. And so it's a humbling exchange that happens for me every time. I'm not only, it strips away my ego, and it touches me deeply. Yeah.
You can see that.
Yeah.
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 You wouldn't do that if you were not touched.
Yeah.
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 And you also said how helpful it's been for them just walking through the school mindfully and helping them for their studies.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, of course. There we go. Yeah, and I guess I wouldn't be doing this work if it didn't mean so much to me. And as I say, I'm quite specific in bringing this work to underserviced communities because mindfulness has been seen as practices for middle-aged white women. And I'm saying this can be of such support to everybody and also regardless of your socio-economic status and of your age. And so, yeah, I work with young and old. And what I love is that the one child said to me, you know, Didi, I have such a long walk to school each day, but as I walk, I do mindfulness walking. And before I know it, I'm at the gates of my school. And for me, that is always lovely to hear how it's touching and making a difference into their lives. Yeah.
You are making a difference in this country and in the world, because I think when we work on ourselves, we work in our environment, and we work really bigger. What is your hope to end this session, or what do you want to tell our audience and the people who are going to listen to you, and what is your hope for this country and for the people you're working with?
Firstly, I'd like to see more people of color who are able to access having been educated in mindfulness practices, because there's still such a big gap in terms of who is able to have the qualifications that I have. It's those who are able to, or maybe they get it through bursaries. In my country, predominantly, there's people of color. And so if there's more of me doing the work in the communities, that is number one. And secondly, is that the mindfulness practices are not that interrelatable, and that within different societies and within different cultures and heritages, there is wisdom. There's inbred wisdom of mindfulness that can be adapted within what we now use as the curriculum of mindfulness. And so I am excited to see how to incorporate, as shared, humming, dancing as a form, as a tool of mindfulness, and just seeing each other for the human beings that we are, and treating each other with respect, with love, and with kindness. That's what I'd love to see.
No, thank you. You're very inspiring, and I know you. I'm sure you inspire a lot of people, and hope many people will follow what you're doing and spread the world with this wisdom, this ancient wisdom combined with mindfulness. Thank you, Didi. Thank you for this conversation we've had together.
Thank you.
And if you wish to, there are other series, other episodes on our Quantum Way Chronicles. And if you wish to know about it, please register to this YouTube channel and make a like.